Hey everyone, and welcome. So today, we're diving into something that affects millions of people, scoliosis. And, when you hear that word, you probably picture a curved spine, right? But we're gonna go way beyond that. We'll look at the treatments you've probably heard of, but then we're gonna take a sharp turn into a pretty radical idea. What if the best way to fix the spine has nothing to do with the back itself? What if the secret is actually in our arms and legs and in these hidden energy highways in our bodies?
So let's get right into it. The first thing you need to know about scoliosis is, well, it's a huge mystery. For most cases, and I mean the vast majority, when you ask a doctor what causes this, their answer is, well, it's honest, but it's also kind of unsettling. They just don't know. And that mystery has a number, 85%. That's a huge number, right? 85% of all scoliosis cases are what doctors call idiopathic. And all that really means is, we have no idea what caused it. It's not from an injury, it's not from some other disease, there's just nothing they can point to.
And that one fact that we don't know, it changes everything. It dictates the entire traditional approach to treatment. I mean, think about it. If you don't know what's causing the problem, you can't fix the cause. So what has medicine done? It's focused on just managing the symptom, the curve in the spine, and really just trying to keep it from getting any worse.
So how do they even spot this curve and figure out how bad it is? Well, it usually starts with some pretty simple physical exams. You've got the Adams forward bending test, where you bend over and touch your toes, and the doctor looks at your back for any unevenness. But to really get the hard numbers, they turn to x-rays. That's how they measure something called the Cobb's angle, which tells them the degree of the curve. And there's even some high-tech stuff like Moray topography, which gives them a full 3D picture of how the whole body is balanced or unbalanced. Okay. So once a doctor finds a curve that's significant, especially in a teenager who's still growing, the conversation almost always turns to two main paths, bracing or surgery. And this is really the core trade-off, the big decision that patients and families have to make. On one side, you have bracing. Now, the goal here isn't to actually fix the curve. It's more like a dam trying to hold back water. You're just trying to stop it from getting worse while the person is growing. And the price for that? Wearing this hard, rigid brace for more than 20 hours a day. Then on the other side, you have surgery. And this is all about correction. They go in with metal rods and screws and literally fuse parts of the spine together to make it straight. A huge invasive procedure. And this really gets to the heart of what bracing is like for a person. We're not just talking about being uncomfortable. I mean, imagine being a teenager and having to wear that thing for practically your entire day. It's a massive mental burden. But there's a hidden catch too. What happens when the brace finally comes off? Well, the muscles that are supposed to be holding up your spine, they've gotten weak because they've been relying on this external crutch for so long. And then there's the surgery option. Look, techniques are way better than they used to be, for sure. But the risks, they're still very real. This number here, 1 to 3%, that's the risk of an injury to the spinal cord during the operation. Now, that might sound like a small number, but when you're talking about something with potentially life-altering consequences, that percentage feels enormous. It makes that decision just incredibly heavy for everyone involved. So all of this leads to a pretty big question. What if this whole idea of attacking the curve directly, what if it's just flawed from the start? This is where we pivot. We're going to look at a totally different way of thinking, one that moves away from seeing the spine as just a stack of bones and into a more energetic view that comes from traditional Korean medicine. And to really get your head around this, there's one key concept you need to know, the meridian system. The easiest way to think about it is like the body's internal electrical wiring. These are energy highways that run up and down the body, connecting every single part. So in this way of thinking, a big problem in your torso, like a curved spine, well, you might not fix it by working on the torso. You might fix it by tapping into these highways way out in your arms and legs. Okay, so this philosophy gives rise to a really interesting technique called Hio's Meridian Manual Technique, or HMGMT for short. The whole thing starts with the idea that, hey, just trying to force the spine straight with brute force, it can only do so much. So instead, HMGMT uses your arms and legs like long levers. By working with them, you can influence the spine indirectly, through those meridian channels we just talked about. The technique uses these special isometric exercises. They call it still movement. It's where you tense up your muscles without actually moving. It's a way of correcting your body's core from the outside in. All right, so this is where it gets really cool. This whole meridian-based idea has actually been turned into a piece of wearable tech. It's a way to take all these principles we've been talking about and apply them constantly, all day long. So let's put this suit side by side with a traditional brace. It's a night and day difference. A conventional brace, like we said, is basically a rigid wall. It just shoves your torso with uniform pressure. This corrective suit, on the other hand, it's a flexible, full-body suit that you wear kind of like Under Armour. It's not about restricting you. In fact, it's designed for you to move in. It uses this clever system of elastic bands to create a dynamic counterforce that's totally customized to your specific curve, working with your body, not against it.
And how it works is actually pretty ingenious. So check this out. First, they take an elastic band and they attach it to the suit in a pattern that is the exact mirror image of the person's spinal curve. Then they add a second band, one that's a little less stretchy, to provide constant, gentle tension against that curve. It's always there, just encouraging the body back toward a better posture. And get this, they can even add little magnets on key acupoints to give those meridian pathways an extra little boost.
And this right here is the magic word, customization. It's not one size fits all. The way they set up the bands is totally unique to each person. So for example, if someone has a common S-shaped curve, the bands are put on in a reverse S pattern to gently pull things back into alignment. If it's a simpler C shape, then the bands are set up to give a much more targeted pull in just one direction. And you can see, even for more complex shapes like a J curve, the setup is again totally different and unique. That's the whole point. The treatment fits the person, not the other way around.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. What all this suggests is that the future of treating scoliosis might not be about picking one camp over the other, conventional versus alternative. Maybe it's about blending these ideas together, taking a much more holistic view of the whole person.
And that kind of support has to go way beyond just the physical stuff. You see this here with something called the LOVE project. It stands for Life, Organic Community, Volunteers, and Education. And the idea is just so powerful. Real healing isn't about fixing a spine in a doctor's office. It's about supporting the entire person, within their family, within their community.
And this might be the most mind-blowing idea of them all. This quote comes from a Nobel Prize winner, Roger Sperry. And what he said is that 90% of the stimulation and nutrition for our brain comes from the movement of our spine. He compared it to a windmill generating electricity. Think about that. Our spine isn't just a coat rack holding us up, it's a power generator for our brain. So a spine that's stuck or crooked, that's not just a back problem anymore, is it? It's a brain problem.
So that's where we'll leave it, with a final question for you to think about. After looking at all of this, what is the real goal here? Is it just about straightening a line on an X-ray? Or is it something much bigger? Is it about restoring that incredible dynamic connection between how we move, the health of our spine, and the power of our brain? It's a question that takes us way, way beyond the curve. Thanks so much for joining me.